Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Unbelievers. Cam's the Unbeliever, and I'm joined as always by...
Barge, still an unbeliever after all this time.
Still an unbeliever after what? 6 months?
Something like that. Yeah. Sorry, folks. I mean, shit happens, life and all that gets in the way. And then, I don't know, about a couple of months ago, maybe a month ago, you sent me an image of an email, a nice email that had been sent in a message from Phil.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he said, but it was a very nice one, and he was wondering whether we were going to finish this off and what's happening. Is it left hanging? Yeah. So we can't leave it hanging.
No. So thank you, Phil, for that little kick up the arse.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And for listening to the show. Much appreciated. So we're going to finish the book today, folks. We left it off at chapter 22, The Catacombs of Mount Thunder, and we're heading into 23, Kirill Threndor.
Right. So what had happened, they had found a second lore, huh? There was a battle and various things, and I mean, they're in the heart of the mountain, and then they come across the second lore.
Second ward.
Oh, second ward.
Aye.
Right, second ward. Right.
In a chest, yeah. High Lord Prothal's face lit up with hope, was the last sentence. Chapter 22. No wonder. I mean, how long have they had the first ward? Years, right?
Decades,
eons, maybe.
And they haven't mastered it.
Yeah, I think it says somewhere they've mastered like 10% of it or something. Not much anyway.
A bit of a tall order, given that there's 7 of them, huh? I mean...
I know. So, yeah, they've got this second ward. What's in it? It's a scroll, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's all we learn about it.
Yeah, and everyone's all kind of, excited and kind of treating it as if it's something sacred apart from Covenant and the Blood God. But Covenant kind of has a bit of a childish response, though, because he said, well, now I can be sent back now that the second lore has been found.
Aye, that's right.
But, I mean, he gets corrected pretty soon.
Yeah.
And that's what they say, that, look, hey, we haven't mastered a fraction of the first award, so...
And there's discussion about whether their discovery is premature because they're not ready for it.
Well, yeah, and whether that could be a move on Fowl's part to get them to come across the second ward and then basically get all messed up because they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
But then there's a lot of Fowl-type speculation that goes on. It may be that Lord Fowl has led us here so that we may be betrayed by powers we cannot control.
Well, Covenants believed that throughout, that the whole party going to Kirill Threndor is playing into Phil's hands. But they go anyway. I mean, what choice do they have, really?
Right.
Otherwise, there wouldn't be a book, would there? They decided not to bother at the
end. So, right, so they kind of gather themselves together and move along from the battle scene. And they're kind of descending further down. Kind of everywhere is dark, and even the language that is used is dark. The air became thicker, hotter, deader. In spite of occasional ascents, their main progress was downwards towards the bottomless root of the mountain, closer with every unseen, unmeasured leak towards immense, buried, slumbering, grim ills, the terrible bones of the earth.
That is pretty dark.
Yeah, so I guess, well, they've been going through it for a while, but yeah, do you get used to the feeling of terror and fear? I don't know. Does it lessen as you go on? Or once maybe you've been in battle, then some of that is taken away. I don't know. You're an ex-army guy. Maybe you have some insights.
I was never in any battles, though, other than with a mountain. So, yeah, I suppose on that. So Druil's bloody moon was rising full over the land. So Covenant's ring is still glowing blood red because of Druil's corruption of the moon. But they can't see it, obviously, because they're under the mountain. And yeah, this was it's the only bit I highlighted, actually, as when I reread this today, when it talks about Covenant's survival as a leper, as he's thinking about making use of the power of his ring. And it says he fell back in revulsion from that thought the instant it crossed his mind. No, never. He was a leper. His capacity for survival depended on a complete recognition, acceptance of his essential impotence. That was the law of leprosy. Nothing could be as fatal to him. Nothing could destroy him, body and mind, as painfully as the illusion of power. Power in a dream. And before he died, he would become as fetid and deformed as that man he had met in the leprosarium. No, better to kill himself outright. Anything would be better. That's some pretty dark stuff, because he's got the ring, he's got the Lily Anril staff, which he doesn't know how to use. He doesn't know how to use the ring either, but even if he did, he's not willing to try because of the illusion of power, how dangerous that is to him for his survival.
So his basic thing is that he needs to keep his alertness for when he wakes up from the dream. Is that his perspective?
I think it's the seduction of power which would lead to his compromising on the rituals he needs to survive, back in his home world. And the power of the ring is seductive, as is the health of the land and his recovering health in the land. When he gets his feeling back and all of that.
Yeah, and in some ways his health was growing in an inverse proportion to the land, because the land was being gripped by darkness.
Yeah. So, yeah. He's got the higher brand staff, and he's thinking about using it in the hour of darkness. Remember the higher brand staff? If he could light it, but how? So when he figures it out, doesn't he? When he touches his ring to the staff.
Right, so you jumped ahead, right? So they come to this lake of molten stone, right? So they descend down and then they come to this lake of molten stone. And that's where TC kind of almost seems to be considering suicide. Because he began to fear that he had already missed his chance to fall. Fall into the molten lake. And then he's the target of an attack out of the blue. There's, what are the creatures called? The Wainwrights, the Urviles. An Urvile, which had hidden itself in a thin fissure in the wall of the crevice. When Covenant passed it, it sprang out at him, threw itself against his chest, and grappled for his left hand.
As if it could smell the white gold or something.
And then he tried to jam his ring finger into its ragged mouth.
Oh, God.
So basically then Covenant and the Urvile fall down.
Yeah, that's right.
And then his fall is broken, but it's pitch dark and he can't see, and then he's panicking.
He thinks he's blind.
But then he realizes that it's just pitch dark.
Aye.
And then he becomes aware of his fear. And somehow that recognition of his fear is the trigger for him wanting to survive.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So I jumped that whole bit. So this is where he when he wakes up from the fall, a fetal fancy came over him. He caught hold of it as if it were a vision. And that's when he gets Atiaran's knife from his belt.
Right.
And goes through the shaving ritual, which is a survival ritual.
Yeah. And also it steadies him very much. I mean, and he succeeds in the dark. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Mm.
Yeah, and then
so it's the fall that gives him back his survival instinct from having considered suicide.
It's the fall, the aloneness, the darkness, the fear, the panic, and then the awareness of all that. And then somehow his contrariness just wants to fight every situation in a sense. Huh? I don't know. And so he gets going with that survival thing. But there he is then. So he's shaved and he's still on, he doesn't know where he is. It's dark and he finds his staff. So he does find his staff. And he also can feel the body of the dead Ervile.
Yeah. And then his ring begins to gleam.
But it doesn't really emit much light, so not enough for him to be able to see by. And also, there seemed to be an approach of feet, which is getting louder and louder. And then he lights the staff with his ring.
Yeah.
So, basically, the feet turn out to be a group of cave wights. And at first, he thinks they're going to attack him, and he gets ready to defend himself. And then he realizes that they aren't out to actually attack him. But they surround him in such a way that he can't move anywhere but the direction that they want to lead him in.
Yeah.
So they kind of shuffle him along in this manner into stinky, smelly Kirill Threndor. And for the second time, he meets Drool Rockworm.
So he does. So Kirill Threndor means heart of the mountain, in whatever language that is. And the mountain itself is called Graven Threndor.
Right.
So this is Drool Rockworm's lair, and if I remember correctly, this is where he appeared when Drool Rockworm summoned him to the land. He was in Kirill Threndor before he somehow found himself on Kevin's watch. So, yeah, time hasn't been kind to Drool Rockworm.
No. And the staff, or the use of the staff, certainly seems to have taken its toll.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting thing which I've never really had an answer to. If the staff of law is a righteous tool, how can Drool use it to corrupt the moon? Because that goes against natural law. So maybe it's that use of the staff for purposes other than what it was designed for that's caused this failure of his health.
I would think so very much. Yeah. And Drool also thinks that he's been promised the ring somehow.
Yeah, it must have been from Lord Fowl, who might have said that, but I'm sure he didn't mean it.
Yeah, he probably did say that, actually. Yeah.
Just a
and
manipulator.
Given what happens later on, I mean, it's quite likely. Yeah, I mean, so he's all kind of there in a failing health, but still just slavering thickly. He reached a hand for Covenant's ring.
You promised the ring if I did what you said. You said. He sounded like a sick child. Drool, Lord Drool, power mine now. Eek.
Yeah, and then, I mean, when he reaches for the ring, then Covenant hits back, trying to slap Drool's hand away with the staff, but the staff breaks into slivers, as if Drool's flesh were vehement iron.
Aye. Interesting.
And then Covenant seems to get something that looks like an electric shock. He pitched backwards, landed with a jolt that seemed to stop his heart.
So the staff that broke into Slivers is the Lily Anril staff. It's not the staff of law.
No.
Right.
No, it's Covenant stuff.
Yeah. So it's a thing of earth power itself. But, it shows the power of the staff of law.
Yeah, and Drool just wants the ring, and he tells his minions to just kill him and just get the ring.
Yeah.
And then, of course, to the rescue comes old Banner.
Yeah, this is a great scene. Banner comes in, kicks some arse, and then Covenant's like, why did you wait so long?
What the hell took you so long?
Yeah.
He says.
And Banner said, we were waiting to see if you were true.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Which is fair enough.
Yeah.
Because, the Bloodguard have been caught out before.
Yeah.
With old Kevin.
Right, so he then starts fighting with Drool, and meanwhile the rest of the party arrive. And Prothol actually tries to get Drool to give up the staff with reason and entreaty. I mean, like...
Well, there's the vow of... was it the vow of peace or something?
Yeah, not to spill blood unnecessarily. Yeah. Well, but, I mean, should have known better, I think.
Yeah. Give it up, Joe Rockworm. The staff of law is not yours. It is not meant for you. Yeah, it says its strength must only be used for the health of the land. So that's kind of confirms what I was saying about how he was using it for other purposes, which would have consequences.
Yeah, and then they just start fighting. And somehow Prothol wins the Staff of Law.
Yeah, old Prothol, eh?
I mean,
despite his decrepitude.
Yeah, there is some more Melanchurian Abatha type stuff expressed, but yeah, he wins the staff, and then the cave whites are kind of freaked out, and the battle seems to be over, and their voices were hoarse and worn, but they exulted in the High Lord's victory as if he had won the future of the land. But then, in the background, they hear Lord Fowl laughing.
Yeah. And one of the Bloodguard gets killed. First Mark Tuvor.
Yeah. So, Prothol gets the staff, one of the Bloodguard is killed, Fowl is laughing in the background, and then Drool is seen with what is presumably the Eloth stone.
Aye.
And he's calling for yet another attack on them.
So that's the Eloth stone has been mentioned before, but I don't think we've actually seen it yet. So this is another Bane from the bowels of the earth. It's actually the title of the second book in the series, the Eloth Stone.
So the chapter ends with Drool calling his armies to crush them. Wielding their weapons, the cave whites surged forward.
Yeah, so it's time to run.
Yeah, because, I mean, effectively, yeah, they just want to kind of escape with the second ward, and now that they've got the staff, just GTFO.
Exactly. So one of the Bloodguard takes the little chest with the ward in it, attaches it to his back with Klingor under his tunic. So that's safe, or as safe as it can be. And then chapter 24 kind of got a spoiler of a title. Remember way back when we were flicking through the chapters?
Yeah, right.
Like, oh, they should have called it something else, really. The Calling of the Lions. So way back when we were getting one of the info dumps about the history of the land, we learned about the fire lions when Berek Halfhand called them down from Graventhrendor, was it?
It was some mountain, and it was the stones and things like that. I think it was the stones. Yeah.
So it was after the ancient battle, the king against the queen, when Berek was one of the queen's army, and they were about to be defeated, and he pledged allegiance to the land and to the earth power, in return for which
the
fire lions came down and saved them all. So you familiar with the term Deus Ex Machina? It's God in the machine, something like that. And it's the concept where there's a story that seems unsolvable, and then all of a sudden God comes down from the sky and fixes it all. And it's seen as being a kind of cop-out.
That way, I see.
So this kind of feels a bit like that to me. Anyway, we're jumping ahead. We know that the lions are coming because the title of the chapter, but let's wait till they arrive before we discuss that further.
Okay. So basically they are looking to make an exit. They're being attacked, and Covenant is also caught up in the battle, and he's asked basically to start using the ring.
Yeah. He's also very upset by the fact that they've left First Mark Tuvor's body behind. He wants them to go back and bring him, because he knows about the ritual where the Bloodguard have a certain number, and if any of them die, they have to be taken back home over the mountains to be replaced. But they do leave him, they have to. So they're running through the caves. The lords are firing their lord's fire at the beasts.
And Covenant kind of, he jabbed at the Lawmaster with his left fist as if launching a bolt. And then that kind of has an effect.
Yeah. And
it basically doesn't let the attackers pass. It's I don't know. It's like a protective shield or something that the ring forms.
Yeah, it says the Lore Master observed the ring as if suddenly smelling its presence. It recognised white gold, hesitated. The wedge halted. So the Lords cast a spell which creates a kind of safe zone, or a wall, a shield, which allows them time to escape.
And what's the name? Lythe, the Manithral.
Yeah.
She leads the way, because she says she knows grass and sky. And
yeah, well, there's a nice scene where she starts to doubt herself, isn't there? And Lord Moram says, follow your heart.
Yeah. I mean, initially the going's good, but then after a while, that's when she even says, shaking her head, I do not know the way. And yeah, that's when he says, well, follow your heart.
Yeah.
And she does. And then it feels as if they're going further down, and it also feels as if they're being followed. But eventually they make it out.
Yep, Lythe followed her heart and led them out of the mountain.
Yeah. Across a flat, grey expanse far below him, the sun rose redly. Something they'll be glad to have seen.
I bet, yeah.
But they're exhausted. They're so tired.
Yeah, and they're still being chased by the Cave White army.
And the going is tough. It's all these big boulders and things, and yeah. And not only that, but they can see the attackers swarming out of the mountain, and they feel the company was caught like a group of mites in the pincers of Drool's power.
Yeah, so it's the way it's written. It sounds like they've got absolutely no chance.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
So, yeah.
So then there's a moment when Covenant is standing at the edge of a cliff, and he decides he does want to use the power of his ring. No, before that, they get the Staff of Law back, right? Or am I jumping around a bit?
Well, the Staff of Law they've had for a while now, because they got that back when Prothol was tussling with Drool.
Aye, okay.
But at this stage, Covenant is kind of even saying, like, no wonder he let us have the staff, so it would hurt worse now. He knew we wouldn't get away with it. So he's then thinking that, yeah, I mean, not only has Drool been a victim of Fowl's kind of planning, but
yeah,
this is all part of it.
That was an interesting part, though, when Covenant shouts out in Drool's defence that Drool's just a victim. You know, it was quite surprising, because Drool's really the principal enemy in this book, anyway. But
right.
he's only a victim as well.
Yeah. And he's the principal, well, seen as a principal danger, because it's the crazy guy wielding all this power.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, yeah, right. He's like this guy pumped up by Fowl to kind of do all this, you know, create a mess.
He's being used, which again, that's what Covenant's been saying all along. This is all Lord Fowl's chessboard here.
And it seems to be accurate, because, I mean, his laughter echoing through the mountain, and now this is happening. They've got the second ward, they've got the staff, but they're surrounded, and they basically are preparing to die fighting.
So yeah, they've got everything Fowl wants, and it's right there for him to take, including the white gold.
Yeah. And so then the whole kind of Deus Ex Machina thing comes in.
Exactly.
And Covenant is beseeched to, for fuck's sake, call the Fire Lion.
And he says, yes, I want to survive.
Well, but yeah, but only after a lot of fuss making, where he says, I made a bargain, I wouldn't have to do any more killing. Don't you know what I did to Atiaran? And I promised her. And he's like saying, no. And also he's saying this is just what he wants. The staff will be destroyed. He'll win. He'll be free. You're just doing what he wants. But he then in fact, no, before that, he actually throws an even bigger tantrum, and he drops the ring and he bangs his head, and Lord Moram even tries to use it, and then they try to force Covenant to use it, and then they give up and they say, listen, it is too much. Okay, it's wrong to ask for more than you give freely. In this way we come to resemble what we hate. So once like they've gone through all that, then Covenant kind of is moved somehow, and he tries to reach for the staff, you know, to wield whatever power or something, and he's too feeble. And then We Are the Blood God banner comes along again, firmly took Covenant's hand and placed it on the Staff of Law. And then power seemed to explode in Covenant's chest.
Aye.
And then we have the drama.
So that whole scene about, you know, Covenant tries to throw his ring away and says, no, tantrum. And then Moram says, no, it needs to be with your consent. Sorry, big guy, you do your thing. We'll leave you alone.
Yeah, right.
You know, and it's like, you know, going back to the scene with Lena way back, with the kind of violation and the lack of consent. It's kind of like that's been brought forward now into Covenant, and that might be what turns him, because he does say what I did to Atiaran and all that in his tantrum, but then when Moram shows some compassion and says, no, sorry, we shouldn't be trying to coerce you, maybe that's what kind of brings him round.
I mean, maybe, you know, sometimes you can't ask someone to do something directly, but if you ask them not to do it, they'll do it.
Or if you leave them the choice without any coercion, they'll choose the right thing. Maybe. Dunno. But he does. He has a explosion of power from his chest, and then down come the fire lines. And what was once a scene that looked hopeless suddenly becomes easy peasy.
Yeah. And even Drool appears out of the cleft above them. The cave wight was crawling, too crippled to stand, but in his fist he clutched a green stone which radiated intense wrong through the blackness of the crowd.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah, so Drool, like, his mind is gone, his body's gone, and he's got the ill earth stone, whatever power that holds, and it seems to hold some kind of intense wrong. Yeah. But they're being shredded, and the whole mountain, Graven Threndor, shuddered to its roots. So, I mean, there's fire streaming down, and everyone, the cave rights and Erviles just being destroyed and running away, but there's no escape. And then, aren't they worried that lions would get them too?
Yeah, it does say that. There was no escape. The lions would get the company before they reached any possible descent beyond the cliff. He had to do something. So then he pulls off his ring and goes to throw it over the cliff. And then he sees that the metal is clean. It's no longer corrupted by whatever Drool was doing to it to make it glow red.
So Drool is basically finished. I mean, that's what that is indicating.
Yeah.
Because Moram says Drool is there in the crevice. Power that he could not master destroys him. He no longer knows what he does. In a moment, the firelands will consume him.
Right, so he's not quite finished yet, but he's about to be.
Yeah. And that's when Covenant also repeats, he's just another victim.
Yeah.
Foul planned this all along.
So now Covenant's seen double. So is this an indication of his transportation back home?
Well, yeah, the thing is, he calls the Ranahan.
Yeah, so that they can escape. So the lords can get away. And they make a big deal of it. How can he do that? He was never chosen, but then Lythe says yes, but they reared to him.
Yeah.
So remember, Covenant was unwilling to bond with any horse. He rejected them. He refused to ride one. And yet they come to him because they reared to him.
And Covenant also is made aware of an interesting thing, because Drool is now dead. And that's what Prothol tells him. And he also tells him that since he was your summoner, with his death, the call ends.
Yeah.
So the spell is broken, so to speak. He says, farewell, Unbeliever. And it's unsure whether he seems to be saying farewell, Unbeliever, with the understanding that it's not like catch you later, we're heading off with the Ranahan and we'll see you later on in wherever it is, Ravelston, but like, bye-bye, you're going back to your land.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then he starts seeing, I don't know, then he seems to be going into some kind of transition because everything becomes misty.
Yeah, so before that, Prothol says to him, take heart, despair and bitterness are not the only songs in the world. That's a nice line.
Especially for TC.
So yeah, then the mists swirl around him. We're into chapter 25, a very short chapter called Survived. So that's him, back to whence he came.
But yeah, and basically wakes up in hospital. and he's told that he was brought here after his run-in with the police car. So that scene where he saw the police car approaching, falls down and whatever, then finds himself, I think after that, and with, that encounter with Drool and then Kevin's watch.
And
So
all his fingers and toes were numb.
And only 4 hours had elapsed.
That's right. Yeah. And interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, just it's back to the same, because the doctor's attitude to him is, right, good, you've woken up, now please just get out of here because nobody's going to look after you. We just want you out. I mean, he doesn't say it, but that's effectively what the subtext is.
Yeah.
He's back to being a leper.
Aye. And we learn that the police car didn't actually hit him. So he fell in front of it. And at the time, we didn't know that it hadn't hit him, did we?
No.
At the beginning. So what caused him to fall in front of it, we don't know. Because you could have knocked yourself out by hitting your head on the pavement, but why did you fall? It says that too, did not feel important.
Interesting, because we saw him look down into the lake of lava and talk about having missed his chance to fall. So I wonder if that was a similar kind of falling. So as it could have been a suicide attempt. I mean, potentially.
Potentially, aye. Can't rule it out. And he gets his clothes back that he was wearing when he first went to the land. The doctor says it must be hell to be a leper. Yeah, certainly. And then we get some weird religious stuff on the last page about the crucifixion, the Middle Ages, and how Christ on the cross, his face is portrayed as being unrecognisable, but the wounds, they are depicted with some kind of realism.
They are carved and even painted in incredibly vivid detail. You would think the artist crucified his model to get that kind of realism.
Yeah, being a leper must be like that.
But Covenant mentions the doctor's sympathy.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess he's...
but the doctor's right. He says that Covenant knows far better than he does how to look after himself. So off you go.
Off you go.
And off he goes. Back to Haven Farm.
Survive.
Yeah. So what do you think would have happened if he had have died in the land?
Could he have died in the land?
I don't know. I don't know.
He could have, he could have just been a, gung-ho, whatever. And maybe that's what he was, and that's what protected him, because he was immortal in the land.
Yeah.
And what's the relationship like? Was it then a dream? What of that does he bring back? Because we don't know.
No, we don't. Does he remember it? It does mention Prothol and Moram, scene where he wakes up. So they're still in his memory, but will it fade like a dream fades? We don't know. Right.
Yeah, and what of his experiences and anything learnt and all his guilt and yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I have to wait until someone does a podcast on the next two books.
Yeah, well, the next one's called the Earthstone, so we've already encountered that particular Bane, but we don't really know what it does. It just said that it radiates wrong.
Well, you know, but...
Well, I know, yeah.
I don't.
Yeah. So I think we can presume from the fact that there are another 9 books that are also called the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, the Unbeliever, that he's going to end up going back, isn't he?
Well, given that the first part 1, I think, is called Rabbleston.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
I don't have that in my copy. Does it give you a little snippet of the next one? in your copy?
No, it
Oh,
just
you've got
says,
the multi-copy, haven't you?
yeah. There's a little slogan that beauty and truth should pass utterly. Part 1, Rebelstone.
Right.
And yeah.
Well, I mean,
But-
we could have a story of the land without Covenant being in it, but it seems unlikely, doesn't it?
And also, I mean, the first line, the first sentence is, by the time TC reached his house, the burden of what had happened to him had already become intolerable.
All right.
So, yeah. So, whatever it is, it's still in the moment that we left off at the end of the first book.
Right. But remember
So-
the time thing? That when he comes back, 4 hours
Oh
have
my goodness.
elapsed.
Oh my goodness. So what would happen like when he goes back after
Exactly.
a week? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Exactly.
Oh, so he'll see like the effects of all that a few thousand years in the future, and he'll have become yet another legend.
Legend of a legend.
Yeah, right.
It's legends all the way down. But no, we don't know how much time has elapsed in land time. But I would guess like a month tops.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
A few weeks, yeah.
Yeah. So let's say 4 hours, 4 weeks. Could kind of roughly.
Okay, an hour a week, right.
Yeah.
So basically 2 days to a year, roughly. So a month is 15 years.
So we'll wait and see how long it is before he gets summoned again.
Well, a year is then...
4 years.
What's that? No.
No? Oh, no, I'm getting...
A month is 15 years, right?
Right.
So it's 180 years. A year is 180 years.
Okay.
Well, okay, so, I mean, yeah. Right, well, wonder how long in Unbeliever time we'll have to wait until we find out.
Hey, we've got our own time as well.
We do. But hey, anyway.
Well, let me just say, Barge, thank you for reading this book with me. It's been such a pleasure. I know that it's not your usual genre of fiction. What do you make of it all? Your first epic fantasy novel?
Well, yeah, it was interesting. I mean, we didn't really get terribly far with those initial intentions of linking it to you personally, right? But it was it was fun to do and nice to talk about, and yeah, just an interesting experiment. And yeah, nice to have some interaction with listeners, and listeners, all of you. Thanks very much for having accompanied us on this,
Aye.
I don't know,
Absolutely.
journey of whatever duration. Yeah, thanks for hosting, Cams. And yeah, maybe we'll do it again in this or another format. Let's see.
Well, the feed will stay. I've moved the hosting to somewhere else that I won't have to keep paying annually to host it. So it's the URL's the same. So it's the unbelievers.co. So I've set up a redirect that'll take you to my Substack, which is camscampbellreads.substack.com. So that's where all of the podcasts will be stored going forward, and the feed stays the same. So if we publish anything on the same feed and you're still subscribed, you'll get it.
And also, if we do ever do a podcast on a different book, then the information should be over there too, on your Substack.
Aye. We'll put it on the same feed if we do decide to do that. Because we can still remain the unbelievers.
I think that's a good idea, yeah.
Yeah. And Substack's great. That's where I do a lot of my publishing about, Russian literature and other stuff that I'm reading. It's a great platform for that kind of stuff. So yeah, you mentioned there about how we didn't really get we didn't tease out the connections between my own personal history and what these books mean. And that's something I'm actually researching a bit more now. Just started in the last couple of weeks, based on a YouTube video that I watched from Philip Chase, who's a fantasy author and also a professor of fantasy, for want of a better word. I think he's a PhD. And he put out a video about 2 essays that Stephen Donaldson had written about epic fantasy and what it is. So I watched that, read Donaldson's essays, which were really interesting. And in them he talks about how epic fantasy is used as a genre to externalize one's problems or shortcomings or whatever you want to call it, and turn them into a foe that you can then battle in a fantasy land. And that's what Covenant's kind of about, and that's what I always thought it was about, particularly in the way that he uses the word despite to describe what Lord Foul's all about. It's about despite, and I always saw that as being, Covenant as the anti-hero who's got all of these neuroses and, his character, the way that the despicable things that he does, all of that kind of stuff becomes externalized in a fantasy land that then allows him to go forth and defeat it if he can. So that's kind of how I see it, and that's probably why, when I think about it, with the bits of these stories that have made me feel the most emotion, the final scenes, I think all of the different trilogies, or the 4th set of books as well, which is the 3rd set of books, which is 4. So what's that, a tetralogy? So in the final scenes where, you fight the big boss at the end, and does he win or does he not? It's like the way that he does battle at the end of those books, after we've been with him for hours and hours and hours through all these epic journeys, where we've met different characters that reflect different parts of his psyche. And then for him to learn from the relationships that he forms as he goes on these quests, to learn from the despicable things that he's done, as well as the love that he finds. And then in the end, when he comes to fight the big boss at the end, how that's written is really, really well done. So I'll put a link to those essays and you can go and read them. I'll put that in the show notes. I'll send it over to you, Barge, as well.
Interestingly then, is there any indication by Stephen Donaldson that the author of such writings finds peace upon the outcome of the battle, where he defeats that shadow aspect of himself, so to speak?
No.
Right.
I mean, there must be some autobiographical qualities in I suppose in any novel that one writes. I don't know. I've never written a book, but
yeah, no, but I mean, just going at the general kind of level of what is being expressed, right? So this notion that the shadow self can be put into fiction, and then effectively a process of some kind of even psychotherapeutic processing goes on. I mean, clearly to name, to label, to understand, to depict is a kind of processing, right?
Yeah.
But then you're still having the battle. So whatever it is, you still got the internal battle going on. And the outcome of battle, well, I mean, if there's still the fight. So there's still the constant internal war being raged. And there's no alternative to that being sought. It's as if there is no option but to fight.
On the author's part, you mean?
In this more general kind of sense, right? Yeah. I mean, because we're, I don't know, looking for similarities or overlaps. I mean, maybe there's a sense of battle.
Yeah, and I
Struggle.
think that the kind of resolution comes, as it does at the end of Lord Phil's Bane, when Covenant is allowed not to have to battle anymore. And that's when he makes a decision to use the power. It's like you spend your whole life battling and fighting and looking for answers, and all you need to do is let go, and then the answers come.
Okay, so, right. So, I mean, I'm totally in with that, right? But then that's the light side, if you like. But there's the shadow side, which is battling.
Well,
and in a sense, peace is when this, I don't know, duality doesn't cause inner turmoil, which is stress.
Yeah, absolutely. So the conflict only is conflict if one allows it to be so.
Yeah, but that's also a very fine thing, because any attempt to control or use force is adding to the energy of conflict and not reducing, right?
Agreed, yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay.
So I think that's why these books give me a sense of hope, even though they're filled with hopelessness all the way through, right up until the end when, not to spoil it too much, but there is always hope. And that's why we've got the phrases here where, Prothal's saying goodbye to him, and the last words he says to him are, "Be true." And that's what the beggar says to him at the beginning, when he puts the ring into his begging bowl. I can't remember all the stuff he says, but that's one of the things he says to him, "Be true." So whatever that means, it's a powerful pair of words.
Well, right. I mean, yeah, and be true then, I mean, okay, to actually look at what it could actually indicate in practical living, maybe also not to be fake, false, inauthentic.
Yeah. And whatever form that might take. So courage would be a form of being true. Or love.
Yeah, that goes very deep, though. I mean, when one looks at it in terms of one's own life.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where, that's where it's a question of, well, how far do you want to go? Because when you start taking your own life apart in terms of like authentic versus inauthentic, then you find that you're faced with lots of choices which are really, really difficult.
Yeah, and you don't always know which is authentic and which is inauthentic. You can be self-deceptive
But one can be self-deceptive in feeling that these things can't be ascertained.
What do you mean?
Because they can be. Absolutely.
The deception, you mean?
Well, no, I mean, one can understand, one can see, one can know in the moment, like in the moment of the two options, which feels true and which feels less true.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's always that option to go for. But then convenience is something that comes in the way, because, I mean, it's always convenient, convenience versus freedom. And freedom is kind of towards truth, and convenience is towards untruth in order to acquire something psychologically, physically, materially.
Yeah. That's like when Moram says to Lythe, when she's having doubts about which way to go, follow your heart. It's a bit trite, but it's also true.
Yeah, sure. I mean, sure, it's only trite when it's used as a word without any action to back it up, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, and also maybe there's that thing of, in the hopelessness you're finding hope, and Covenant is also in his panic, and his fear of death, he's finding the desire to survive.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. All right. Anyway.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
We'll leave it there and say goodbye to our listeners and thank them all very much. Thank you for being on this journey with us, and we hope you'll come back if we do.
Rightio.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye now. Bye.